You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 103 of the DCAU Review. I'm one of your hosts, Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. And Cal, we're wrapping up our month of Justice League / Justice League Unlimited reviews with another fun one today.
Yeah, very excited to do this one. This one, we mentioned it actually back during our first week of Justice League Unlimited, which you can go back and hear in the archives at DCAUreview.com. But we are reviewing this week the Booster Gold-centric episode, The Greatest Story Never Told, which is interesting. As I was doing some research here before we went on the air, I realized it wasn't even intended to be a Booster Gold story originally, but we can get into that as we discuss this episode in total here.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that, because that's actually a note I did not have in my own notes, so I'm looking forward to... I'll be hearing that along with the audience, in fact, so I'm looking forward to that. But yes, as you mentioned, Cal, we are talking about The Greatest Story Never Told. This is a really interesting episode, and we'll get into our plot and our other main categories as we go. But of course, Cal, we'd like to start these episodes out with a little thing that we like to call the Imdb official synopsis.
Yes, we do.
And this is the synopsis for, as you mentioned, The Greatest Story Never Told, which was written by Andrew Kreisberg, directed by Dan Reba, with music by the Dynamic Music Partners. And that synopsis reads as such. The Justice League battles Mordru in the background as the narrative follows Booster Gold as he attempts to close a walking black hole, all while he's supposed to be on crowd control. And that is actually one of the better synopses that I think we've had on an IMDb thing, as far as actually explaining what happens in the episode, Cal.
Yeah, what we have here is not much to add to that IMDb synopsis. Well done. What we have, we open up here, and it's Booster Gold. He's introducing himself to a crowd of people. Skeets gives him a nice introduction. We learn that he's from the year 2462, and he's traveled back in time. He gives an intro that sounds very much like one that you would read at the beginning of a comic book, maybe the introduction of Booster Gold #1 or something like that. He has to go to his past or return to the past to protect your future. It's Booster Gold, and we quickly see that people are not very interested in Booster Gold at all. And we learn that the Booster is really after one thing in this entire episode, that being fame and possibly fortune.
Yeah, and I think that's really an interesting part in this episode, because the way it's sort of set up, like you said, we have this little intro with Booster introducing himself to this crowd who's sort of unimpressed, and then you have him, he goes up to the watchtower. He's complaining to the Martian Manhunter, who's kind of the head coach of this new expanded Justice League, who decides who goes on what missions, and he's just begging him to kind of put him on a mission, on a bigger mission. He's asking him, what about Grodd or the Joker or Darkseid? Like, who's out there that I can, he's looking for his moment in the sun. And finally, sort of reluctantly, Martian Manhunter allows him to go onto this mission where the Justice League is fighting this sort of very obscure DC Comics character called the Wizard Mordru. And they sort of set it up as, oh my gosh, it's going to be this big, awesome, epic fight. And this is, at least of the episodes we've watched so far, Cal, this is kind of one of the first ones where we get to see like a huge chunk of this expanded Justice League in action. And I think that's really fun to see. But obviously, that's kind of the background. I think that's one of the things that's interesting, is that's this big epic superhero battle is the background of a very kind of lighthearted comedic story of Booster Gold kind of figuring out what it truly means to be a hero.
Yeah, as you said, there's a large roster that's in this episode: Atom Smasher, Aztec, Blue Devil, Crimson Avenger, Dove, Dr. Light, Dr. Midnight, Firehawk, Ice, Huntress, the Ray, Rocket Red, Shining Knight, Stargirl, Starman, Stripe, Supergirl, Superman, Thunderbolt, Vi, Vigilante, Wildcat, and of course, that's not including Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Jean, who also make appearances alongside the Elongated Man and Captain Atom. So we really have a jam-packed episode here, but the irony in that is that it's drilled down to this story that really focuses on one hero. And thinking about it, as we get into talking about the plot here, I think that's one of the great things that I enjoy about Justice League is that you have those episodes later on in the seasons that, in the future that we'll cover that really incorporate large chunks of the team battling. But when you have these episodes that were able to drill down on a handful of characters, one or two, with the initial episode at least, notwithstanding, I think we talked about when we talked about Initiation, how introducing all those characters and then drilling down to those 3 or 4 seemed like an odd choice for the pilot episode, but it really did set the table for an episode like this, where you have other things that are happening around you, but they really focus on one character and his story in the midst of all of this stuff. Now, interestingly enough, like I said, as I was going through here and doing some research, I found out that this story was actually intended to be a Firestorm story. But was later changed to a Booster Gold story. Firestorm, of course, never appears in Justice League Unlimited. He did appear in some of the Justice League Unlimited associated comic books, and probably in the action figure Mattel series, they did make a Justice League Unlimited Firestorm, but Firestorm never was one of those few DC characters to never make an actual on-screen appearance here in the Justice League. So interesting that they pivoted to a Booster Gold story, but I think that they had a lot of fun with this whole Booster's really here just to be a fame and glory hog, which kind of lines up with his character in the comics from my recollection.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're telling a story like that, to make a character like that is still kind of inherently likable is definitely a tightrope. I'm sure it's sort of a tough line to walk, and I think that's one of the things the story does really well is that even though he's very openly. He's asking the Martian Manhunter, like, how much money did you make last year in the Justice League and things like that. And you're talking about, and he seems like the type of guy who would go out and sell deodorant or something like that. He's this real kind of, as he said, he's there for the fame and the glory. And it's funny to have that type of character that he could come off very, very unlikable very easily. But the way the story is kind of crafted, he's kind of almost like this lovable loser because he thinks he's finally going to get his moment to kind of step into the spotlight and show off and then show what he can do. And in fact, he's put on crowd control as the synopsis mentioned, and he's sort of kicking rocks and all upset, and in the midst of it he discovers this because of all of the damage caused to the city by Mordru, it sets off this strange black hole device, and he has to go on this adventure. And of course the rest of the Justice League is busy, so he has to handle it himself. And he kind of has a moment where and along the way he also does other really goofy things, like he saves a kid's ant farm and has to deliver a baby for a screaming pregnant woman because the paramedics got sucked into the black hole. So it's really like it's like a lesson in humility for him as much as anything.
Well, I was going to say, I think what they do really well is that he's out to seek all of this, the fame and like the accolades, right? And he keeps getting frustrated because nobody knows who he is. People keep thinking that he's Green Lantern. That's the running joke throughout this, is people just keep calling him Green Lantern.
Can I have your autograph?
Of course you can.
I thought you were Green Lantern.
Here are your ants.
Thank you, Green Lantern.
I'm not Green Lantern. I'm Booster Gold. If I were Green Lantern, my costume would be green, now wouldn't it? I have officially hit rock bottom.
Thank you, Green Lantern.
So each and every time he thinks that he's going to get some sort of praise or glory for something, it's either something silly, like saving an ant farm from a burning building, or it's something where nobody else around really sees what happens, with the delivering of the baby, or, he thinks he's gonna place the collar on there's this restraint collar that he's given to try and shut off this walking black hole, and he keeps failing at every turn to try and get it on. He gets sidetracked, or something literally impedes him, or he gets hit by a train at one point. So he gets beaten down to the point where he doesn't, even when he finally succeeds and he's able to be the hero. Skeets, his robotic sidekick, encourages him, tells him, "Oh, this is the point where you get to, quote, kiss the girl," unquote.
Sir, according to my thermal sensor readings of Dr. Simmons, you just missed a prime opportunity to, well, I believe the phrase is, kiss the girl.
Kissing girls is for heroes, Skeets.
And he doesn't even feel like he's deserving of that at that point, and walks away. So yeah, humility is definitely something that he's taught. And I think that subverting of the story, each time that you think he's going to get what he wants, it's a little bit like the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner bit, just when he thinks he's going to get it, here literally comes a train and he gets hit by a train,
Yes. Yeah, it actually reminds me of the recent live-action Shazam movie. A lot of that movie it seems like you're setting up for the big heroic moment, but then he's kind of, he's so inexperienced, or he's in it for the wrong reasons, and it kind of keeps getting in his own way before finally at the end getting the big heroic moment, and that certainly is on full display here, and. Yeah, I think it results in a really, really fun episode, and I actually gave plot a 9 out of 10 for this episode.
I chuckle because I also gave this a 9 out of 10. I must admit, going into this episode, this was one that I have not reviewed a lot. I don't remember watching this one. This wasn't one of those that I had on repeat a lot, but I enjoyed this one, and I think I would have probably given it maybe the perfect score, a 10 out of 10, just if there had been a different villain. I hate the walking, I feel like they could have, with the amount of people that they have at their disposal at this point, they could have had some other villain be the villain, or the threat, the walking black hole be the threat. And instead, it's just sort of this no-name professor who's a walking black hole. That's my nitpick.
If it had been another supervillain or something, that could have added an extra little wrinkle to this that would have made it more fun. But yeah, I would agree. It's still a really strong episode, and like we said, it's still very, very likable, and we'll get into that certainly in voice acting. But the back and forth between Skeets and Booster Gold, let me just tell you, when Skeets gets sucked into that black hole and the music swells,
Booster!
I was so much more emotional at the prospect of Skeets dying than I was when Captain Atom blew up in Initiation. I was so much more invested in Skeets, the flying robot, Booster Gold's robot hype man, than I was in the actual living being Captain Atom dying a couple episodes ago.
I think that's a testament to Skeets' personality, or a testament to the lack of personality that Captain Atom had in that first episode.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Moving on here to visuals and animation, Cal. So it's funny because there's some very visually interesting things, but maybe the most visually interesting stuff is the little brief glimpses we get of the Justice League fighting this wizard Mordru. And we get very little of that. And I actually thought it was funny when we mentioned this, I think, on last week's episode, but when on this first season of Justice League Unlimited, the theme song includes clips from the episode you're watching. And like 95% of the clips they show from this episode are the clips of the Justice League fighting Mordru. And I actually thought that was clever because it's that's a way to use this to like subvert the expectations, because the way it's all set up, you think, okay, this is going to be a big epic team battle against this giant wizard. And then that's 3 minutes of the 22-minute episode is devoted to actually seeing anything from that battle, and the rest of it is Booster dealing with this black hole that's stuck inside this guy's stomach. So I thought that was actually really clever, and the battle itself looks very cool, but we don't get to see very much of it.
Yeah, I would concur. I think maybe like a companion episode where you saw what was happening on the other side of things certainly would have been interesting. But I actually think there were still some visually interesting things happening even outside of that battle. I mean, we do get the introduction, first appearance of the Elongated Man. Well, first fleshing out of the character of the Elongated Man. So we get to see our first stretchy guy. Here in the JLU.
And a mention of Plastic Man, despite him never actually visually appearing in this or any other episode.
Yeah, another one of those characters who was featured in the comic book and in the accompanying Justice League Mattel action figure series, but never featured on screen was Plastic Man. Just the one nod here, so interesting. But Elongated Man, of course, visually interesting character. Sure, he's Detective Mr. Fantastic, but he's that's still a visually interesting character for sure. And I think honestly, the way that they visualized. I did just knock the character of the walking black hole, but the way that they visualize the power of the black hole and things being sucked into it, and the way that they sort of elongated and distorted themselves before they got sucked in. This isn't the first episode, Liam, by the way, with a black hole. If you recall, there is a Superman the Animated Series episode that we saw probably 3 million times with Jaxer and Mala that was in heavy rotation, where we have not
Power, I believe that episode's called.
Man, that would be a great pull if you did actually pull the name of that episode. But we have not reviewed it yet here on the show, but that one was one that was in heavy rotation on the kids' WB back in the day. But they visualize things very similarly in that when you get sucked in, your body just elongates, sort of like a Plastic Man type character. So I appreciated they kept the continuity going here as far as how things things look when they're sucked into a black hole. But of course, when at the very end, or at the tail end, Mordru sort of the battle with Mordru and the Justice League and Booster Gold's attempt to corral this walking black hole kind of come to a head as Mordru uses his powers to make this skyscraper come to life. And there were some great visuals of this sort of this building all of a sudden has a mouth, and the visual gag of them flying out through the where the behind of the building would be, I thought was pretty witty also. But yeah, that you get some interesting visuals there as this building starts to walk around, and the front windows look like teeth. And I thought visually this episode was fun all around.
Yeah, there's something that you mentioned, some of the cool black hole effects. I think the spot where the subway train gets sucked in is really, really well done, because it sort of comes at him and it sort of crunches down into like this 2D like snake-like thing and kind of swirls around as it's getting sucked in. They did some very clever things with those effects. And then at the end, when Booster does finally get the collar on the Dr. Brown, and he the black hole is sort of reversed and everything kind of starts flying back out of him. I thought that was clever. There's a spot where Booster's kind of lost. He was distracted by, I think it was when he was delivering the baby, and he goes to try to find his doctor friend, and he can't quite find her, and then he notices a flock of birds being they're flying up, and then all of a sudden they get sucked back down. I thought that was a really clever effect as well. So yeah, they do some really visually interesting things with the black hole stuff as well. I agree there. And actually, I went ahead and gave visuals here an 8 out of 10. I thought this was a very strong episode.
I thought it was strong, but I thought it was stronger than what you thought it was. I actually gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 for visuals. Wow. I struggled to find anything that I didn't like about this. We haven't even discussed the composite Superman cameo. Yes. Which of course we did allude to on our Instagram this week, if you follow us at DCAU Review. But even composite Superman, who is this, I guess he's a Silver Age. I guess he falls under that Silver Age, like weird half Superman, half Batman creation. He makes an appearance, actually voiced by one Susan Eisenberg, as we'll discuss in voice acting. But I thought that was a nice little nod to that goofy off-the-wall character that has no place in this sort of continuity. But with this mad villain who's Martian Manhunter refers to him as the most magic, or the strongest magic, or has the most amount of magic in him. I think he is what he says, more than any other person he's ever come in contact with. So for that character to be able to make a cute little wink to the camera there with composite Superman, I thought was really awesome too.
Agreed. And that will move us on to music here, Cal. And I'll be honest, Cal, I don't have a ton of music notes this week. Music notes, there's a pun. And I thought the music was fine, but there wasn't really much that really stood out to me as far as like great moments. I think there's some sort of fun, epic fight music towards the end, as you mentioned, when sort of the battle with Mordru is converging on Booster dealing with the black hole. But there wasn't a lot that was like really, really stand out to me. What about you?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with music, especially after we had talked so much about how music played such a huge role in last week's episode, which of course was For the Man Who Has Everything. Again, check it out on wherever you listen to your podcasts or at DCAUreview.com in the archives. But we talked about just how great the music was last week, and what a pivotal role it played in that episode and setting the tone. And I think this week it sets the tone, but it's less of a focus. It's certainly less of an impactful tone. I didn't quite take note of any particular Booster Gold theme that stood out. There's one that sort of plays as Skeets gives his intro at the beginning and explaining to the crowd just who Booster Gold is. But I didn't hear that really come into play, at least in a major way, later on. So there's a lot of mood-setting music here, which is fine. And we've talked about how that a lot of times plays an important role in episodes, but maybe just doesn't do enough to blow us away or make a giant impact.
Yeah, I think it certainly plays in the back. And as we said, because this is kind of such a light episode, and it's very much focused on the dialogue and on some of the, as you mentioned, some of the sort of more broad physical comedy of Booster being about to save the day, and then a car falls on him, or he gets hit by a train, or some of that. Yeah, I think the music certainly, I think, kind of falls into the background in that way. And for that reason, like I said, nothing wrong with it, but nothing super standout. I just gave music the old standby of a 5 out of 10.
All right, yeah, I went a little bit higher. I went a 7 out of 10. I think it does set the mood pretty well in some of the, especially in those battle scenes. The climax, honestly, of the episode, as I said, where Booster's story sort of clashes with the rest of the Justice League. I thought that the music setting that up to and even when Skeets gets sucked into the black hole, I thought that really, really did well for that scene. Again, it's not a memorable theme. It's not something that you will remember, or that you'll be humming later on. But it was enough to me to make an impact in that scene to give it a little bit higher. So I went 7 out of 10.
Very good. And Cal, that will bring us to our final category here, which is, of course, voice acting. And in addition to all our regulars, we actually have a pretty star-studded guest cast here to talk about. So in addition to your regulars, as we've mentioned, we had Carl Lumbly as the Martian Manhunter. We had Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman. We have Kevin Conroy as Batman. George Newbern. I think we heard George Newbern yell at one point. I don't know if they have libraries.
Definitely scream. Yep.
I don't think he had any actual lines. I don't know if they have they just used an alternate take from a previous episode of some of the ADR and threw it in here. I don't know quite how that works, but we have some of the, and of course we have Phil Lamar's Green Lantern as well, all sort of in very brief minor appearances. But then we have a big guest cast here to talk about. Starting out with, you mentioned the Elongated Man was kind of a treat visually. He was voiced by one Jeremy Piven.
Get out of here!
Yeah, of Entourage fame, and of The Goods, Live Hard, Sell Hard. Everyone remembers that movie. Yeah, well, he wasn't a great movie star, but he was a very, I think Entourage alone, he's a big TV star over the years.
Absolutely. So it's can't wait for Summerfest. Crossover.
But yes, I thought that was cool because Elongated Man pops up in a few different episodes, and I think maybe even back then when I was watching the show, I always thought that sounds like a familiar voice, but of course. I never really thought about it. But when I was looking at the credits, I was like, no way. But yes, in fact, Jeremy Piven is the voice of the Elongated Man, and he's good because again, there's kind of this little side resolution to Booster and the Elongated Man kind of commiserating about being overlooked and underutilized, and finally, Elongated Man gets called into the battle, and we find out at the end that he's actually the one who saved the day and stopped Mordru. So I thought that was clever. And yeah, it's fun little, even for a minor role like this, it was fun to see that name pop up.
Absolutely.
We have Lori Loughlin playing Dr. Simmons, the love interest of Booster Gold, who folks may know from such things as Full House. She played Becky on Full House. You may also know her because she went to she might be going to jail as part of a college admissions scandal, which broke in the early or late spring or early summer of 2019, where a lot of rich celebrities and business people got caught kind of trying to bribe. I think bribe is the word.
Yes.
To certain higher learning facilities to get their children admitted, mostly through sort of fake athletic scholarships.
Some might call it pay to play.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that might be why if you hear that name and you recognize it, it might be from Full House. Or it might be because you've watched the news at some point in the last year and have heard her name in that way as well. But hey, she does a fine job here.
Yes, she plays the voice of. I mean, say nothing of the human being herself. She can play a decent. She does a great vocal performance. We'll leave it at
that. We have Billy West as Skeets and actually as Dr. Brown, the walking black hole as well, who folks might know as the voice of several of the main characters on Futurama, including Fry, kind of the main character of the show, as well as the professor and the lobster alien Zoidberg. Just a tremendous voice actor. He's done a lot of voices for kind of the more modern Looney Tunes things. I think he still does the voice of Elmer Fudd, and he also did the voice of Bugs Bunny, and it might have been in Space Jam, honestly. But he's done a lot of different Looney Tunes voices, and just a tremendously talented voice actor, and we talked
I
about
thought
that
it
a
was.
lot.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. It was cool that he gets to switch up roles here. Obviously, in Futurama, he plays the human being that has a robot. Bender is his robot, so he gets to switch it up here and play the role of the robot for a change. So yeah, I think he does a great job as Skeets' voice. Skeets has a lot of personality. It's an innocent, a bit of innocence to him. He's obviously Booster's biggest fan. On top of it, so he doesn't have a ton of like heavy lifting to do here, but for the role that he is asked to play, he does it really well, I thought.
Yeah, well, my favorite line might be, I think it's right near the beginning of the episode, but when Booster's kind of lamenting that nobody wants his autograph except for the one kid who thought he was Green Lantern, and Skeets very earnestly goes, "Sir, I would like your autograph."
I would like your autograph, sir.
Shut up, Skeets.
I thought that was so funny, and I thought that was really well done. And then, yes, we have Tom Everett Scott as Booster Gold. Done a lot of different television. Maybe more recently, people might remember him from the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. I know that's a popular show. I've never seen it, but he's on that show. And in fact, it's funny we mentioned him. We should mention Mr. Scott and, in fact, Billy West were apparently so enjoyed in this episode, perhaps by James Tucker especially, and perhaps as well Andrea Romano, the voice director, as they were brought back to reprise their roles as Booster and Skeets in multiple episodes of the Brave and the Bold cartoon later on. So they not only got to play these roles kind of as a one-off here in Justice League Unlimited, but in a couple episodes of Brave and the Bold as well. So yeah, I think Tom Everett Scott's was, again, we talked about it in plot, but having a character that's this self-absorbed and this much of a glory hound and still have him be kind of likable and you still being able to root for him is not necessarily an easy thing. And a lot of that comes from the writing, but I think it also comes from his vocal performance as well.
Yeah, it takes some points. I think it. I mean, obviously, I don't think he sat there and listened to vocal performances and said, "Hey, I'm going to take from this person and that person." But there's some Michael Rosenbaum in there. There's some snarky male lead in a movie, in a comedy movie. Whether this is obviously before Deadpool, but a Ryan Reynolds type, I guess you would say. Yes. But at the same time, he doesn't go over the top. It's not distracting. And I think, like you said, by the end of it, he was not very likable within the first 3 minutes of that episode, but he turns it around really, really quickly as he begins facing more and more, kind of failures, I guess, in what he's trying to do. So yeah, I think his performance is really, really great. Makes a lot of sense as to why he was then cast again as this character later on in, as you stated, in Brave and the Bold, because yeah, he does a great job. He does a great job of communicating that arrogance to a point, and he even gets his I hate the word, but I'm going to use it, his swagger back a little bit at the end of the episode, as he kind of jokingly rubs Elongated Man's face in getting the girl at the end, and sort of restates a line that the Elongated Man had used before to taunt him, and that being the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So yeah, I think his performance is really, really great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And for all the reasons we've talked about, like we said, I think this is a really, especially from the guest cast, to carry so much of this episode. I actually went ahead and gave voice acting a perfect 10 out of 10 in this episode.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I went with a 10 out of 10 also. I think everybody did a really great job here, and I think that the performances were really, really strong and warranted that perfect score.
Well, there you go. All right, Cal. Well, that will bring us to our final. Oh, wait a second. That sound, in fact, means we have a bonus point. The first time in a few weeks here. And it's not my bonus point sound that's going off this week. That must be your bonus point sound going off this week, Cal.
Aye, that it is. And the reason I am giving this a bonus point, so I actually did some research before we went on here to try and verify that this was correct. I only saw one mention of it, and that was on the IMDb page, which, of course, we mentioned a couple weeks ago, is crowdsourced. So no official confirmation on this, but I thought it was interesting enough to try and find somebody else to see if they agreed with me, and at least one other person agreed with me. So that being in the very, 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 very first scene, the opening shot pans across the screen, and it is a robot who is laying in the middle of a building that Booster has apparently just defeated. He goes along and gives a speech about how the robot never stood a chance. Visually, if you look at the robot, and I did twice just to make sure, but the robot visually is very, very similar to one of my favorite robots in the history of animation, that being the Iron Giant, which is also, of course, a Warner Brothers property and a movie that is near and dear to my heart. And one of my favorite movies of all time, maybe one of the best pieces of animation of all time, way ahead of its time. It's a cult classic now, and it's kind of gained this following. It was not a commercial success at the time. I would love to have an entire hour to discuss the Iron Giant and how great that is. But visually, this robot that has been defeated by Booster Gold has a visual similarity to the Iron Giant. So I felt like maybe the artists here were giving that movie a little wink and a nod. But as I'm not the only person that thought that, I felt like it was enough to give it a bonus point because somebody else out there thought it looked visually similar too. So I'd love to get confirmation one day that was indeed a nod to it. But even if it wasn't, visually striking, the Iron Giant gives this an extra bonus point there.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. And we should mention, this is not a bonus point for me, of course, because again, you didn't hear my bonus point sound. But when Star Labs sort of is first affected by the Mordru battle leading to the black hole, we see a group of doctors running away, and one of the doctors looks a lot like the guy from Nothing to Fear. The professor who scolds Bruce Wayne for being a party boy who would bring shame to the Wayne name. He happens to look a lot like that guy. I don't know, like that guy was like a professor of something of psychology or something or was he the dean of the college? I don't quite remember what even his title was in that game, but he's the guy who fired Jonathan Crane from.
Is it Dr. Long? I think we were talking.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he's the guy who fires the Scarecrow from the university, leading to the Scarecrow becoming the Scarecrow, basically, and there's
the one who basically tells Bruce that he's a disappointment and a disgrace to the Wayne name.
Yes, the whole point of that episode is sort of set off by Bruce having this sort of being accosted by this man who knew his father, and then tells him that Wayne used to stand for something, and now you're just a spoiled pretty boy. And anyway, that a person who looked a lot like that doctor happens to have apparently been working in Star Labs at the time of this cataclysmic event. And boy, if it is the same guy, man, he's got a rough life.
I'm pretty sure he made another appearance. We mentioned his appearance in another episode at some point also. We'll have to figure out which one that was, but he's definitely, he gets around. That dude is working overtime at a couple different places.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not that they just like reused a character model. Like
definitely
it's either the same guy or he has a twin.
Right, exactly. Either way, we need that story fleshed out.
All right, but on a more serious note, we can give our actual final scores here. And tallying everything up here, Cal, I have a final score of 32 out of 40.
Yeah, and mine is a little bit higher. I think our I appreciated the visuals a little bit more than you, and I gave the music a little bit of higher score, which brought, with my bonus point, actually put this into our top pick section, a 37 out of 40 for this episode.
Wow. So I guess we can touch on rewatchability here before we wrap up. I would say, this one gets a thumbs up for a rewatch because again, it's a good example of how you can kind of address this giant group of heroes fighting and having these crazy battles, but also kind of tell smaller stories at the same time.
Yeah, I would say that, like I said, based on the fact that this wasn't one that I watched a whole lot, it's not one maybe that I'm going to watch 10 more times. But if I'm looking for a good episode and one, I watched this actually with my wife who, she doesn't dislike Batman the Animated Series. She has a fondness for it in her own way, but she's definitely not fanatical about it. But she enjoyed this episode as much as I did, I believe, in our watch of this episode. So, with that, I would definitely recommend it as give it a watch. It's not pivotal to the rest of the story, obviously, but it's a cool spotlight on a character that you may not be too familiar with or has not gotten a lot of time in animation, or hasn't gotten his own movie yet, or has not had a live action version of him made. No TV series about Booster Gold as of yet. So I think that
he did get to guest star on Smallville once in that final season, but never his own series or nothing. He really hasn't even been around that much in the comic books for the last going on a decade now. He's kind of been in the background or not used at all. So definitely, I think a character that could use a little more shine as we move forward here into this brave new world where any superhero can get a TV series.
There you go.
All right, Cal. Well, that will wrap us up for this week. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. This was episode 103. We want to invite you to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Both places you can find us at DCAU Review. We're always posting on our Instagram. We have new episodes coming up, and Cal does a great job of keeping us abreast of all of the news and new. There seems to be new DCAU themed merchandise of some kind coming out almost every week, which is so exciting and fun for us. And we try to keep everyone up to date on that sort of stuff. And we also post clips of upcoming episodes or episodes that have just dropped. Their little audio clips on our Instagram page. And you can always follow us on Twitter if you'd like to discuss with us your thoughts on this or any other episode we reviewed, what you think we should review next, anything like that. We look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. Don't forget also, since our last episode, we also put out an additional bonus episode where we're talking about Batman: The Adventures Continue, the comic book, first 2 issues. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Make sure you give that a listen. Make sure you give those a read as well. They are out in digital form now. Liam, I know we discussed today, this week on Twitter, we were talking about some of the variant covers that they're coming out with. Just lots of cool stuff happening with Batman: The Adventures Continue, and no shortage of DCAU talk happening these days. So make sure you do check that out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. We are on Google and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're on all of those major podcast apps. So no matter where you listen to your podcast, give us a subscription. If you listen to one on Apple, go ahead and give us a review. That helps us out. Give us a 5-star review. Let people know why you like us and what you like about the show. That helps us out, helps us improve, and also gets more ears on our product. So other than that, I think, Liam, the last thing that we have to do is just talk about what we're going to be covering starting next week, which, hard to believe, we are already in the month of May.
Yes, it is. It's wild because this year both seems to be going forever and yet seems to be going by so fast at the same time. Life is short, but the days are long, I think is the expression. And yes, as we enter the month of May, we will be heading back to the future.
The future, Liam?
That's right. All the way to the year 2000. I mean, 30 years from now, whenever now is or whatever. Right. That's right. We will be covering Batman Beyond, and we will be picking up right where we left off, of course, with all the Batman shows. We go in episode order, review each one in order. So we will be picking up with the much beloved, I'm going to assume, episode Rats. So we will be picking up with a very memorable, if nothing else, episode of Batman Beyond next week. And that will wrap us up for this week. Until next time, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.